We're standing at the base of a hill, and the whole purpose of what it is that I'm proposing is understanding how to use the natural life force in our bodies and link it with the natural geomagnetism of the Earth. Now, we all know about a thing called gravity. Apparently it was Isaac Newton who discovered it, but I think it goes back further. But let's just say, because God graced him with an apple that fell on his head, he woke up and thought, well, maybe there's something that pulled the apple down. And it's the same thing that pulls us down. And the only thing that stops us from getting crushed completely is something called the reactive force of the Earth. Now, most of us probably have remembered this at some stage during our school science studies. But the thing that's most important to know about that is that the reactive force of the Earth is what not just keeps us from being squashed, but what gives us energy, literally. And it responds in as much as you are aware of its existence. So what this exercise is about is learning how, with every single step taken through the back of the heel, that's the base of the heel, where our sciatic nerve point is, stimulating life force moving up the back of the leg into the sacrum, and from there up the spine through to the crown and circulating back down. So we're talking about governing vessel, conception vessel. The same principle as in the Chinese. Let's go a simpler level. I call them lines of force, and all the work that I do is based on a principle which is called seguilineal training. It means follow the lines of force rather than going against the lines of force. So we're in the center, and we are what's called a bilaterally symmetrical form. That means what's on one side exists as well on the other side. Everything tends outward. Most people that I've trained with, for some reason, because they haven't understood how gravity works, it's not just that it works from the heavens down onto your body, it also works from inside out. So everything goes away from the body. In anatomical terms, it's called distal, not proximal. So if you're standing like this, with your shoulders hunched, and the neck is forward, and all the back is off center, we can see that we have three main principles here. Your center of gravity, which is not just a concept, but it's very real in physics, and we can speak at another time regarding how that relates to the existence of what's known as Dantian, Pranic Center, or the Hara, or the Omphalic Center, and all these wisdom traditions. Then we've got the law of opposites. So in order for the body to not crush and get squashed, we have to understand how from the center of gravity, I use not just a symbol, but an image that it's like a sun. And as it expands radially symmetrically, it means in all directions at the same time, like a sea urchin, it travels upward through a spiral along the central channel, which is directly related to our spine, to the heart. Now, this area here, I will use more simple terms. This is our pelvic girdle, which basically controls and supports the legs. And it sits on top of the legs, literally. Now, what sits on top of here is the entire torso. And so at the top of the torso is our shoulder girdle. So this particular center, sometimes called a chakra, is directly related to this center. It's about where the heart is, but it's directly related to the shoulders. These two are very powerful centers with respect to how energy is drawn in and generated in the body. And then we look at this center, which is the midbrain. So of the 7 main centers in the body, these 3 are the yin centers, the feminine centers, because they draw energy in. They basically charge, and this system here has to do with earth foundation, structure, identity, sense of security and confidence and guilt, etc. This one here, mostly to do with emotions, expression, giving and taking, exchanging. And this one here has to do with a deeper level of seeing and understanding that is beyond the left brain, beyond logic and reasoning, and beyond wishing and the survival instinct. So sometimes it's called, consequently, the psychic eye. As a result, what we need to see and understand is that gravity is not just something that exists outside of us. The cells in our body are also subject to gravity. The molecules in the cells are subject to gravity. The atoms in the molecules are subject to gravity. If we do not see and understand this, therefore we will have a very big problem with knowing how to interact and relate to the external world. That is then the key to making a link with something on a greater level, or the cosmic level. So, go back to the beginning. If every single breath we take, we're mindful of the fact we're drawing in life force from literally the ions, the free ions in the atmosphere and in the water molecules. So it's not something to do with a wisdom tradition or a religion. It's very real in scientific terms. And every time we breathe out, we are releasing our own toxins. And toxins are not simply physical. They are mental, they are emotional, they are physical, and they are energetic. Then, every single cycle of breath becomes a cleansing and an extending and expanding process. Coupled with the process of walking, every time we step, we are sensing that something is moving up the spine because I've catalyzed that movement by stepping on a trigger. It's like a button, and that's the heel. But the legs should not be bent, because when the legs are bent, the muscles are limp, and the tonality of the muscles aren't working at maximum efficiency, therefore maximum effectiveness. So we're not using our potential to the best. No one is saying we've got to do this all the time. And secondly, it's a lot easier on a flat. But when we're going uphill, there's another element, and that is that because we don't use the backs of the legs very much, and that relates directly to the kidney meridian, so along the back of the leg, into the first center, all the way up through the spine and to the crown, we have this system internally which is designed to literally be activated through the activation to support us in the process of not standing straight, because when we evolved into bipedal beings, you note that Pithecanthropus or monkeys still hunched down, and the only time they stand up is to make a statement. So the whole purpose of standing is like the ultimate statement. I am now on a par. I'm equal to gravity. When I'm down here, I'm below my center of gravity. When I'm on my balls of the feet, I'm above my center of gravity. Like with ballerinas, they go right up as high as possible because the objective is trying to get a sense in the body of being free from the limitations and the constraints of gravity. So when you feel, if you don't understand what gravity is, you'll feel the pressure of life, literally. You don't have to have a psycho-emotional relationship to it or anything that one could turn around and say, oh, that's just in your mind. Actually, no, it's in your body. If you don't understand the gravity in you, you will be under the pressure of life, full stop. And that's what all this is about. So it's very practical, very tangible, very real, and very scientific. And here's the other key. Walking backwards helps to literally utilize muscle groups and stimulate meridians that will then assist us once we turn around to walk forwards in such a way where the whole body is moving, where it's an effortless process. You are being carried. And the key to it all is this thing here. It's a very powerful part of the body. It's right at the root and the base of the spine. It's the sacrum. It means sacred, the sacred bone, and has the most amount of nerve endings passing out of it through the holes that there are there into the main channels, the sciatic group in particular, the ischium they call it, and it feeds like a cable the activating synapses to energize and activate the muscles of the legs. And that is how we literally bilocate and we walk around. So think about it. If the entire upper body doesn't understand gravity, it sinks internally. And that sinking creates pressure in the pelvic girdle, which creates pressure in the legs. So as you walk, you start shuffling or dragging yourself. So if a vehicle, a car, was not smooth and fluid, and it started, for example, the tires were gripping too strongly with the ground, or the heaviness of the car was not being supported by the tires of the car, you would feel the sluggishness and you'd feel the heaviness, and it becomes a very big effort to actually move. And it's the same thing. This is our vehicle. And if we don't understand how to work together with natural forces, Gravity acting down, reactive force of the earth coming up, and gravity in the body moving outward and expanding rather than inward and contracting. Then the whole system, unfortunately, is in a heavier state of chaos. There's no coherence. Therefore, we are not simply seeing and experiencing life as a heaviness, but we are being that heaviness. And that is a great disadvantage to ourselves. And interestingly enough, 78% of all physiological problems that humans have are related to the spine. And that's because we have very little consciousness. And let's go one step further, and then we'll wrap this up. The brain is a massive electrical conductor. The central nervous system and the main nerve running through the spinal cord itself is a very thick cable with many small branches. If that, for whatever reason, is impaired as a result of a malalignment through the entire spine, then it's like an antenna. Up here we don't see clearly, so therefore our television screen and the reception isn't clear. And then all the other connections in the rest of our vehicle are not clear as a result of some kind of movement of either a disc, an intervertebral disc, or a shift, a malalignment of any one of the vertebrae. The consequence is we don't have efficiency and effectiveness, and we have basically a state of disorder and chaos. And it's very common that when we are describing specific, we can just call them ailments, but disorders, and we are talking about them in the context of our daily life, we talk about lack of clarity, lack of concentration, lack of ability to focus, to interact, or psycho-emotionally to feel comfortable, to feel good about ourselves, to feel that we're somehow engaging with life, with people, with our families, or even just to say it's difficult to walk, it's a struggle. So every single one of those expressions or descriptions are a result of chaos caused by a lack of understanding the nature and the essential quality of our internal environment. We're not in tune, literally. We're out of tune with the internal. Because the focus, the attention, and the main intention is outside, external. And it's a problem. Because if you don't know yourself, it's going to be very difficult to know how to receive, transform, and then transmit. So the system isn't harmonic. Therefore, there's no balance. And nobody complains when they feel balanced. It's usually when something's not happening right is when we make some kind of statement, but actually the body will tell us, and that's what pain is about. It doesn't matter whether it's in the knee joint. Again, symmetrical element. Look at our shape. We've got these two trunks. We've got this block here. We've got these are all extensions. The main part of the body that's most important is the head sitting on the neck, which is supporting movement of the head in all directions. Then there's the torso, which should be able to move in all directions very easily and fluidly. And then there's the legs. So, for example, the whole purpose is if we walk this way, we're getting an imbalanced set of information signals regarding coordination, harmony, and balance. So that's why we go in position 2. Because what it does is it sets a spiral up. Every single time we're moving, it sets up a spiral in the body. Now, you could walk just straight, marching like a soldier, and that helps for the sense of being straight, literally erect motion in the body. But it's not natural, because the reason why this is more natural is because it literally is setting up spirals. And you can obviously accentuate that in the way that it is done, for example, in ballet, because they open up the whole of the movement here. So from here we go up so far, it's actually here. There's a parallel system, so there's a box here, and you go up into the center of the body, and then from there you move out into all directions. So there's one here, one out there, and one back there. So if we close this and we're coming into what they call the fifth position, is movement from spiral here, this is straight out to the side, and spiral behind. And the whole purpose of all of this is to understand the full limits and extension of the body and the human anatomy. That's why we'll do what's called a rond of the leg. What that's actually about is fusing the concept of energy harmonics and balance in the body with sacred geometry, because it's the sacred geometry in your body that you are linking with the sacred movements of energy externally. So it isn't some pompous, ridiculous movement that is unnatural, which is why ballet dancers have problems. The reason why ballet dancers have a lot of physiological problems is because the system is not taught in its entirety according to universal principles. Meaning, center of gravity, law of opposites, creating geometry and form. That geometry and form goes into the 10 directions, which means left and right, heaven, earth, front and back, and then your diagonals. There are your 10 directions, and that principle is spoken about and taught in all martial arts as well. So there's a link between the classical form that underpins what's called classical ballet and all other movement systems by studying exactly what I have been speaking about. Center of gravity, law of opposites, geometry and form. You then, as a result of this, interface with space. If you enter a space without understanding or having that level of awareness, then you're not working with the space. You're imposing on it. And if you're not working with it, you're not receiving anything from it. You are imposing your intention on it. And that's fine, but you can only get back what you put in. So if you are there for a purpose to say, I wonder what will happen if I focus on that crop circle, then obviously you've already come with an intention. Whereas if you come in, we call it respecting the space and its sacredness. It's the difference between going into the forest and receiving its energy and power and walking out and feeling very filled with power. So basically you've taken from the forest and it's given you something, but your left brain came with intention to receive the energy of the forest. That's yang. Going into the forest and saying, I am so upset with my life, etc., and I love being in nature because it's so beautiful, it's so marvelous, it's so wonderful, and I lose myself in it, and I'm just floating and lost in the romance of being in nature because it's so beautiful and wonderful and so nurturing. That's the yin form. And somewhere in between, there's this state where you go into the forest because you know you're entering into a sacred space. And once you're there, what you do is you firstly bow and say, may I have permission to enter? And that's exactly the thing we need to learn, having permission to enter into ourselves. And not use the left brain to say, I will now practice vipassana meditation. I will now tell myself where I'm going, what I'm doing, because my left brain has been brought to its attention that I'm sick, I've got cancer, I must cure myself. Suddenly we're waking up to the fact that we've been ignorant, self-centered and stupid. And we want to wake up. How wonderful. And so the body sits there and goes, yeah, right, sure. That's not how it works, mate. Get to learn about me, my nature, get to understand what mistakes have been made and what's in here in this environment, i.e. the toxins which come from the mental, the emotional, and the physical, and then we'll work all this out together. But stop sitting up there in your high tower, looking down and pointing fingers and say, you, go and do this. You, go and do that. It's a dictatorship. And we all know what happens with dictatorships. Sooner or later, they topple, they crumble, they fall. And that's why our health and our lives starts toppling, crumbling and falling. And we can sit there and say, oh, well, what do you expect? I am getting old after all. And that's life, isn't it, after all? So, if that's what you want it to be, that's exactly what it will be. But if you're aware of the fact that we need to understand this internal state of collaboration and what is known as reciprocity, because unfortunately the majority of what we do in this part of the world is a left brain dominating, therefore it's a compare and contrast game of how big is this compared to small, how strong is it compared to weak, how black compared to white, how masculine compared to feminine, how yin compared to yang. Whereas if we begin to adopt the perspective of how much black is inside the white, how much weak is inside the strong, how much negative is inside the positive, we then begin to see how much of me is inside you. And this makes a very big difference to our worldview. How much of me is in nature? So where is all this going? We start with first teacher, therefore, our system, our organism, our inner microcosm. Second teacher is outside, i.e. nature. Third teacher, nature and life. Third teacher, the cosmos itself. Follow the pathway. Fourth teacher, you look at other humans. And if you follow this pathway, you will never be sucked into or fooled by personality and character again. Because they are the masks, the many who's that we are. You will only be seeing the what. And the what gives you a direct indication of the level of harmony and balance according to coherence that is present in that person. And then you'll know exactly what's going on, and you make clearer decisions. Very direct, very simple, to the point, without wasting any more life. So, that is it.